Assalamu alaikum students. Today we will talk about the important themes of modernism. These themes contributed a lot in understanding this movement for the common reader as well as the common people of that age and the ages to come. So the first theme is technology, or we can say industrialization or the cult of industrialization. Number two is Freud, Sigmund Freud, who is a psychologist, and his theory psychoanalysis. Then the unreal city, alienation, and the last one is the presence of the past, which is stream of consciousness technique. And now the detail. The first theme, which is technology or industrialization, we can say that modernist period started from 1860 to 1940, and this was the real time when human beings understood that the world changed, and it was not only changed but it was completely changed. So idea of traveling at a mile a minute was but a dream. Then the moving picture and the photograph was also a dream. Electric signals through wires and then wireless was also one of the things which could not be expected before 1860. And in 1940, the world was different place. Machines allowed people to see moving, talking pictures, to travel at more than 100 miles an hour, to fly through the air, to transmit both voices and images without wires, to talk in real time with someone at the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. So all these things which were considered to be the dream before 1860, by 1940 these things became reality. Human relied on machines to a much greater extent that they ever had, and it is hard today to conceive of a world without powered machines. But 1860, many people in the United States lived their entire lives without ever encountering a powered machine. The modernist writers, almost as a rule, feared the new technology and left it out of their writing. We can name here that only James Joyce set his manuscript Ulysses in 1904 before motor cars had become widespread. T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound moved easily between historical periods but rarely mentioned the technological advances in their writing about the progress of life. Rather, these two writers look back to the classical or medieval or Renaissance periods, fearing that dependence upon machines will cloud their minds. This thing will make them less able to understand what is truly important about human beings. The only modernist writer who really engaged with technology, in fact, is the Italian futurist writer Filippo Marinetti. He was a person who came to London to perform spoken word pieces that celebrated machines. The glory of airplanes, cars, factories, and machine guns was always the subject of his poetry. Blinded by his fascination with the clean efficiency of machines, he ended up advocating the violence of World War I, and in the mid-1920s he became an apologist for Mussolini. Mussolini, who was an Italian prince, Italian ruler, who was in favor of Hitler, and he fought with Hitler in First World War I. The next theme is Sigmund Freud. Modernist novelists had no more important influence than the Viennese psychiatrist Sigmund Freud, and he is the major person in this field. Although he did not actually invent the discipline, but he is considered the father of psychoanalysis. His writings propose a three-part model of the psyche consisting of id, that is the primitive drives. The primitive drives, or you can say in most easy words, instincts. Then ego, the sense of self, and we can say that this is the reality. And afterwards, the third point is superego, which is based on moral lessons and codes of behavior people internalize. And you can say in the easiest words that superego is morality. Freud believed that human behavior and neurons have causes of which people are unaware, causes that stem from childhood experiences or from the thwarting of certain basic urges. Psychoanalysis was predicated on the idea that an analyst could pick out certain ideas and reactions in a patient that would indicate the real problem. And we can quote the names of the writers like Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, who took this idea and turned it into the basis for fiction. What was the idea? Psychoanalysis was the idea. These two writers were reacting against realist writers who sought to simply record the unadorned facts of world around. By doing all this practice, the modernists believed that the psyche of the narrator will always be affected by unknown forces and thus is never able to capture reality without any kind of bias or alteration. Rather, people should attempt simply to record thoughts, for by this the reader can understand things about the narrator that the narrator, him or herself, does not. We can quote the name of Joyce's first novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, and in this novel he records the thoughts of Stephen Dedalus, who is the hero, and he records his thoughts from the time he is a nascent little boy to the time he is a college student. And then we can quote the name of the short story by Virginia Woolf, The Mark on the Wall. Here, Virginia Woolf captures a moment in time as a woman looks at a mark on the wall, and the narration follows her mind as she extrapolates all of the possibilities of what the mark could be and follows all the subconscious connections her mind makes with seemingly unrelated topics. Students, we can say that modernist writers felt that the interior monologue or the stream of consciousness technique gave readers access to the character's consciousness as well as character's subconscious. The third theme is the unreal city. The Wasteland poem is written by T.S. Eliot, and he describes London as an unreal city in this poem. This is a city through which shades of dead troop over the bridges. Modernism was the first literary movement to take urban life as a given, as a form of experience that was categorically different from any other kind of life. The French symbolist poet Charles Baudelaire was fascinated by the flaneur, the man who strolls the city aimlessly as a way of life. The anonymity of the city, its darkness, its mechanization, its vast power, all inspired the modernists, and it attracted and repelled them in equal measure. Further, you can say that modernist writers, most of them interestingly enough from suburbs or small cities, they gravitated to London and Paris, St. Petersburg and New York, where they found each other, formed movements, drank and fought together and broke apart. So all these modernist writers came to these cities which were considered to be the unreal cities as well. London was the first home of Anglo-American modernism, but the city's essentially commercial character eventually sent most of the writers elsewhere. By the 1920s, Paris was the home of one of the greatest concentration of artists in history. In the 1930s, with war looming in Europe, the artistic energy moved west to New York. But no matter what city, the city was almost always the subject of modernist literature. Although he could not stay there and moved between Paris and Zurich during his exile, everything James Joyce ever wrote was about the vibrant urban life of Dublin. The poet Hart Crane composed his epic poem, The Bridge, about the Brooklyn Bridge, the monument of engineering and architectural beauty that made New York City the center of American urban life. I'm repeating, the poet Hart Crane wrote the poem The Bridge about New York City. Eliot's melancholy poems point out the loneliness and lack of meaning city dwellers often feel while living in those cities. The city where technology and masses of people and anonymity come together became the master trope of modernist movement.